So an example of this in action is seen in a recent report that I did with many colleagues at the World Bank, looking at the quality of public services in the Middle East. Now, the usual way in which you would write a report like that would be to have a whole series of graphs looking at how one country stacks up against another country, and the basic message would be that the underperforming countries should learn something from the better performing countries. What we tried to do with this report was to take that same approach, but do it within countries and go down the unit of analysis as far as we could before our data ran out, essentially. So one very, I think, instructive example was looking at education in Palestine, the Palestinian territories. As you know, this is an area that's often experiencing very difficult circumstances, shall we say. A lot of pressure from neighboring countries, a lot of unrest. And yet some of the schools in Palestine are producing students that are performing on international tests, as well as many countries that are way richer and much safer than they are. So what is it about those systems that mean that some schools and some particular areas are doing so much better than others? And in a country like Palestine, like many in the Middle East, it can't be a policy problem, in the sense that the same curriculum, the same salaries, the same career incentives face all of these teachers, and yet some of them are working together in schools that are producing such amazing outcomes, and in others they aren't. And what we did with this particular work was to use our household quantitative data to be able to look at the variation across the country. And then when we had found these schools that were so outstanding, we would then spend a week or so in those places doing in-depth case studies around trying to understand not just what was going on within the school, but between the school and its community, and also with the public officials who were overseeing these different schools, middle levels. Not so much policy makers, the people at the top, not just the teachers, the people working directly with teachers, but the people in the middle who are channeling resources, who are hiring principals, who are overseeing the process by which these happens. And cumulatively, we were able to document just why these outstanding schools were doing so much better than others. And again, the challenge was to do with implementation. It wasn't so much the policy that they were adopting, it was the strategy that they took with regards to getting, in particular, getting strong parental involvement in what they did. What he discovered, and what they had identified long before, was that one of the reasons that students were often underperforming was because parents themselves weren't able to help their children with homework. Parents were often intimidated by the school. They themselves didn't read and write, and so they didn't know how exactly they could help their own students, their own kids, to learn better. So one of the innovations that this school pursued was not so much to do with helping children, it was helping parents. They would regularly hold open house sessions where parents would be invited into the school, so it became a less intimidating place. They would outline to the parents what the curriculum is going to be doing in the coming weeks, so that the parents would be in a much better position to be able to help their children with their homework, for example. So the innovations were not ones that outsiders would have thought of. They were innovations that Palestinians themselves had come up with. And we think that that kind of evidence, those kinds of stories, those kinds of accounts of how success is being achieved needs to be replicated. We need to do that. We need good data. We need different types of data. And we need to be able to recognize that different kinds of problems need different kinds of data. And that, I think, is the way in which the MOST program can have a really big impact, is if it takes a version of that kind of approach, of using the existing forms of data to map, just like we do with a weather map. We look at the highs and the lows. Do the same kind of thing with poverty, do the same kind of thing with service delivery, and then try and understand how it is that those highs and those lows are occurring. We've done this for the Middle East. We're now hoping to do versions of this in other parts of the world as well. This is with the World Bank, but I think it's a model that can be used generally in many different sectors in many different countries.